GKFX Prime presents the Market Analysis webinar.
Hello everybody, welcome to another weekly webinar. Promises to be a pretty interesting week coming up because we have the Fed meeting on Wednesday and stock markets have been crashing heading into this. The Nasdaq's down over 10% from its highs. We're seeing the S&P 500 break down below its 100-day simple moving average, which has been dynamic support for quite a while. So the uptrend really getting tested in stock markets now, and we're at some interesting moments in currency markets too. Potentially a time for the dollar to break out if the Fed is going to signal a whole bunch of interest rate hikes this year. But you know, markets based on they're based on expectations, and so there's quite high expectations now for what the Fed will do this year. And so it could be that if the Fed are just a little bit more cautious, more dovish than the markets are expecting, then we could actually see a big move in the dollar the other way, and potentially some breakout moves in the euro and the pound, etc. So very interesting week coming up. I'll cover the charts now. Obviously, as usual, if there's anything extra you want me to cover, just drop a comment in the video and we're happy to look at that. Otherwise, just click that thumbs up button. It's right down there, right at easy mouse clickable distance away. Give that a click just so you can support the channel. We appreciate that. All right, so let's get started here. Start with the currency markets, move through to the metals, the other commodities, indices, crypto. That's generally the way we try and do things here. Like I said, let us know if you want another chart or bit of analysis covered. So start with the euro. This is our simple candlestick chart that we have here of the weekly candlestick chart. Sometimes I toy around with having fractals on the chart. They look a bit ugly, but they are very good for giving you a bit of a sense as to what is the market really doing on its most simple level. Is it making higher highs and higher lows, or is it making lower lows and lower highs? In the case of the euro, there's actually not a super easy answer because you can see that it's making lower highs. This was the big fractal high up here. This is the most recent one. We've actually not formed this yet, so technically this you have to watch out for the last fractals on the MT4 and also most charting packages. They'll form it a little bit early. So actually only once this candlestick here, our current week, once that is below this high here, then this fractal's technically formed. And just in case you don't know, a fractal it's a high with two lower highs on either side. So you can see, for example, this one has, at least two on this side, two on this side. But you could look and you could see certain examples. For example, where's a good case where on the weekly chart it's a bit more clear cut. Oh, for example, like up here. Say this was actually a low, there was one on either side, but it's not a fractal because it was only one on either side, and this one was actually a lower, and then this one proved to be the fractal because it has two on either side. So that's a by the by. Sometimes I draw these on the charts just to get flavor of the overall simple trend in terms of like Dow theory, higher highs and higher lows. And then the other confusing thing on the euro is that we have actually put in a higher low. So clearly the euro has been stabilizing a little bit off the lows here, and we did get that pop out breakout, which turned out to be a bit of a fake breakout because the very next week we had this big bearish candle. So now that was last week. Now we're dealing with this current week, and we're back into the former euro trading range. But there's still a possibility, as I say, that either this is just a long this is just a sort of flag pattern, just a consolidation, and the market's about to rip lower. Maybe we even come down to test 110 or something like that. Big picture here in terms of the euro. Or, we're actually about to snap higher and make a higher high as well as a higher low, and actually start to trend a bit higher, or at least consolidate in a larger range and not be trending down so much in the euro. So those two possibilities are open. If we drop down to the daily chart, here we can see, let's just get rid of this one. We can see that we are actually just about trending higher on a daily chart because we did make that breakout move, but then unfortunately it wasn't able to find any support at this old resistance, and it just crashed lower. And now we're stabilizing again, interestingly, on the 50-week moving average. The 200-day moving average is way up here. So in terms of the euro being kind of due a slightly, even if you're saying that the weekly trend is still down, you can still make the argument that it's really far below its 200-day moving average, and maybe it's just due to get a little bit closer, a bit of a reversion to the mean, if you like. And the two most recent lows, if you're going by the fractals, were equal. So you could sort of say that just about, and if you look at these lows through here, you could say we're just about trending higher on a daily time frame basis. Although this last correction has been a bit ominous. So trending down, but signs of a reversal on the weekly, trending up on the daily, and obviously you can imagine, just based on that last bit of price action, that we're that big reversal from the high, we're trending lower on a 4-hourly basis. But check out here, you can see that we formed that big low, corrected, ready for the next leg lower, but didn't really make much progress. It was basically a false break lower, popped up, made it back basically to the high, and just rolled over from there. And here we're back at this same low again. So if we're starting to, if we are going to start seeing signs of the euro building up some strength and actually trying to form a higher low here to match our higher high, and actually start to, build a move off this 50-day moving average and make its way up towards the 200-day moving average. A first sign of that could just be a snap through to get through these two highs, basically. And, one way of doing that would be through a declining trend line, a break above there, or just more simply, just some sort of, however you want to draw this resistance through here. If you're just drawing it as a range, just a breakout through here, which is roughly speaking, if we're going by this line, it's 113.60. It's a little bit lower. If you go for that slightly more aggressive entry with the highs, you could even just go through the closes if you wanted to do that, and that would even be lower. So some sort of sign of like we've based out a bit here, not been able to make lower lows. Can we burst up here and try to make a higher high on the 4-hour time frame? So a little bit of extra trend analysis this week, just to kind of mix things up and keep it interesting, because I think we are at a bit of a pivotal time in the currency market and indeed in the stock market. Is the current trend about to reverse or continue? So that's, a bit more extra thought on the trend here. That's what's going on. So this is moving over to sterling now. Here we're starting on our higher time frame, starting on a weekly chart. And you can see actually why we reversed last week like we did, because we have been making, as the fractals have dictated here, lower highs. And we came up, tested that 50-week moving average, tested the trend line, and rolled over successfully. So it's a successful test of both those, that confluence of resistance there. And you can see on the same thing that we've been making lower lows. So really on a weekly trend basis, even though we've had a really nice rally over the past few weeks, technically if you're going by the fractals, we're actually still in a downtrend here on a weekly basis. Now, clearly, when you drop down to the daily time frame, you can see that we based out, back in December, and we had that breakout right, just before Christmas, and we actually had a decent rally through the first half of January, and now we're correcting that rally. But we can see that we were making, we broke above this base, made a higher high. We were making equal lows down here. And then making a series of successive high up here, higher low, higher high, higher low, But now just recently, as I say, this one's not completed yet, but we have broken down below this low. So technically on course now to make a lower low down here somewhere. So the uptrend on the daily basis is just given up a little bit, and maybe that makes sense because actually the trend on the weekly basis is down. So this is actually the kind of opportunity that can be very good, is when there's been an uptrend on the daily, it reverses back in sync with what's going on the weekly. That can be a good situation. So that's what we're starting to see here. On a 4-hourly basis, you can see that we did take out that low, and then on the 4-hourly basis we were respecting that low. We've dropped below it at the start of the new week, and so it would just be interesting to see if this downtrend that's emerging on the daily chart, can it gain momentum with further moves down here based on the 4-hour chart, or actually will this prove to be a false break? Maybe we pop up back through the lows and we lose a bit of momentum, and maybe there's some signs that the daily trend, which is up, starts to reassert itself. So switching gears to dollar yen. So this is our weekly chart here. You can see that we have been making higher highs, so the trend is still technically up. The most recent low we made, which was still forming, is above these other two lows. But we did have that big bearish engulfing weekly candlestick, and then the following week we tried to make it up, and we made it into the body of the candle and reversed lower. So these obviously two pretty bearish looking candlesticks, and you can see that we didn't really make much of a new high this last time around. We rallied up, hit this kind of rising trend line, pulled right back down to the previous peak, and then just collapsed the next week. So that's all fine if it's just a natural pullback, but it might be that we had been trending higher for a while in dollar yen now, and it might be that having hit, I believe it was a 5-year high. Can we see that from our monthly chart? Yeah, obviously we're this was a pretty major resistance, and we're kind of dropping back from it for a second time. So potentially we're just staying inside this big range that we've been for a while, or at least we're just getting a pullback from the top of the range. So again, it's that question is, where does this long-term, where are we going in terms of this long-term trend? On a daily basis, you can see we had that big sharp pullback, obviously, and but still, interestingly, that low that we formed there was above these former lows here. So still just about clinging on to an uptrend on a daily basis. Now we're testing this low, having made a lower low. So almost on the verge of confirming a new downtrend here, having made one leg lower, bounced up, and then are we going to make another leg lower and start making lower lows and lower highs on the daily chart? The moving averages are still configured in a kind of bullish manner, and so that will be interesting. If we do take out this low here, then we've got this major, basically weekly support where we've got our two lows that we formed here. Can we hold on to that area? In which case, these longer term uptrend on a weekly basis is still intact. And then on a 4-hourly basis, you can see we've got this downtrend coming into this most recent daily support, and then our weekly support down there. If we are going to get a reversal back in line with the kind of long-term uptrend, then we do have our downsloping trend line down here through the 4-hourly highs. Might get a new one down here, and then that will be a sign. If we can get a breakthrough there, that will be a sign that actually this kind of daily downtrend that we've been having is running out of steam, and we're moving back in line with the weekly. But if if this line just holds and we break down through support, then obviously the daily trend, which is down, is putting pressure on the weekly trend, and we may actually get a breakthrough and make a lower low, in which case we're just kind of downtrending on all the major time frames. Let's have a look at gold next. We're moving away from the forex. Oh no, I've just had a look at silver. Let's have a hold on. There we are. Let's have a look at gold. So gold on a weekly time frame, we are looking at higher highs and higher lows. We have actually formed even in this most recent fractal here is a higher low. So this one you could say was lower than this one just about, but it's sort of more like flat. And this was our low down here, and you can see we've got a bit of a vague channel going on. And again, these two were flat, but then this most recent peak was higher than this one. So something of actually just the compressed kind of day trading time frame that maybe we'll be looking at just more recently. I mean, obviously all this was bearish. We know about that. That's already happened. That's in the rearview mirror. But just what's going on at the moment, there's a bit of a kind of bullish tilt to it. And obviously if we get a breakdown through all these lows and we close down here somewhere, for a while I've had this support drawn through here. If we do get a breakdown through all these lows and make lower lows, take out this support, then that changes the picture obviously. But for the moment, there's a bit of a mild bullish tone to gold. And you can see that actually at the moment, if we drop down to our daily time frame, here's our kind of resistance based on these 2 weekly pivots back, fractals over here. And we broke through it on a daily basis, and you can see that actually that resistance area seems to be working as support. And so there's our 2 daily highs, just about on a daily basis. You can see too that we've got a bit of a kind of little channel going on up here, and we sort of bumped against it, and we're trying to kind of get out of that channel into something a bit more serious upside momentum. But at the moment, it's just kind of pretty meandering uptrend. But they've got this resistance potentially after that big move up. Maybe we've got a bit more momentum coming into the gold market, and we can actually break out of this channel. So it's all kind of on a weekly basis and on a daily basis. We're up near the highs. It's uptrending technically, and you can see we did just have a bit of a pullback on the 4-hour chart. And at the moment, we haven't closed this candle yet, so it's not confirmed at the start of the new week. But if we do get a break through this declining trend line, it's a bit of a sign that the short-term 4-hour trend has broken back in the direction of our daily trend, which is higher, and our weekly trend, which is higher. So that short-term trading momentum is back in the long-term direction that we want it to be in, and we can start thinking about trying to take advantage of a rising market and on all the time frames. So potentially looking good for gold. What I like about this scenario is that our risk is pretty well defined, because look, this is our resistance. We could see we broke out of the range once, crashed back into the range, but by the time it was back below these former highs, then this breakout was no longer working. Now we're trying the breakout again. Basically, we failed once, but we did make a higher high, and afterwards we didn't crash down and take out the support. We held the support. We made a higher low. So now we're trying again, and maybe second time lucky. You could, third time lucky maybe. This was first time. This was second time. Those two didn't work. A break through this high, but maybe the third time lucky will. So yeah, decent little acceleration even as I'm doing the webinar here. Gold pushing up into the highs as we start the new week. And I would imagine silver doing something kind of similar. So silver, we did make, we basically were going sideways, right? You can see that this fractal, this was a false break, just ran into the 50-week moving average and tanked lower. But it did hold the long-term support. So we've held the support several times. Most recently, we put in a higher low, and we've taken out this most recent weekly fractal to the top side. We've not formed a a new higher fractal yet, but the fact that we've broken above this one is a sign that actually momentum is kind of turning to the upside, right? We're not taking out the lows, we're actually making higher lows, and we're taking out the highs. So that's a sign that the strength is to the upside. But we ran into the 200-day moving average and the top of the range, so that was naturally a place for the market to pull back from. And over the last couple of weeks, it came off the highs the first week, and we put in an inside bar or harami pattern last week. Potentially what's setting up now could be an interesting, if this market really was about to take off, which, you know, some volatility is to be expected this week because we do have this important Fed meeting, and obviously precious metals very much reliant on a monetary policy, interest rates, and the dollar. So if we are going to get a big burst higher in silver this week, adding to these previous gains, you know, what it could be is we have an inside bar, we get a false break to the downside, and then we actually close up inside the body again, or even through the top side of it. So the potential, we've got an inside bar, a harami, and then a fakie is when you get a fake breakdown through the harami and then actually go out the other side. So maybe it's just a short-term consolidation before the trend continues. That's a possibility. We can look down to our 4-hourly chart and we can see that we did take out the low. So made lower lows, and you know, we made lower highs. So at the moment the momentum is correcting lower. It's trending lower on a 4-hourly basis. If you are buying into silver right now, you're going against the short-term momentum. So the way I like to trade these markets is wait for the short-term momentum to move back in sync with this potential, you know, with the longer term. You know, for example, the daily trend is bursting out, right? It's made a big new high lows being made on a daily time frame basis. And so let's wait for the 4-hour time frame to pull down, make a low, move back in sync with the upside, and trade that upside. That seems to be the way this market's going at the moment. But you know, maybe we've topped out. So this is the thing. Maybe the 4-hour downtrend that's just starting to emerge, maybe it's the sign of a top. But it's very difficult to pick tops, and it's generally better to trade with the trend. And at the moment, the trend is up in both gold and silver. Right, sticking with the theme of commodities. So we've got, this is the weekly chart for WTI, and we've just broken out, obviously, to new 7-year highs in, the 7-year highs in Brent, or multi-year highs either way in all the major oil contracts. And this is our weekly candle. You can see that we are making higher lows. We have been for a while on this weekly chart. You know, sometimes there's a little, we had this little, when there's a spike week like that, sometimes it's almost better to ignore. If you had a big spike lower and that ended up forming a fractal, and then we broke below it, but then we immediately smacked back above it because the market's almost not putting so much emphasis on like that's a proper fractal because it's just such a big spike. Anyway, that aside, you can see that we've been making neat higher highs and basically forming this long-term wedge pattern, which maybe ends up being bearish. But for the time being, everything's aligned bullish. And if we drop down to our daily chart, you can see also a very bullish trend where we had that big kind of crash down from the high. Then we popped up, and then we consolidated under this high, and then we eventually made a new high, having made a new higher low as well, and then, you know, another higher low, higher highs, and we're still in the process of higher highs and higher lows on this daily time frame. The only thing being that on a 4-hourly basis, you can see that we tried to break higher a couple of times and we actually snapped lower. We're still sitting on this 50-period moving average on a 4-hour chart, still generally uptrending, but you can see we broke below that rising trend line there. And, you know, potentially this was the first sign of a bigger reversal. But as I say, the overall trend is up, So, you know, yes, you would have made, potentially that would have been a decent trade if you traded that move down here, but the overall trade is up, and actually if you know, bought near that former high, bought on the moving average, or even waited for this fractal to form on the 4-hourly chart, you know, you've been buying back into this kind of rising market. So for the time being, we've got a bit of a pause. We have made a lower low on the 4-hourly chart, and potentially, depending on where the next 4 hours close, potentially a lower high as well. So then lower low, lower high suggests that maybe we are going to get a pullback and a bit of a false breakout above that previous high, and potentially a reversal here in WTI, but no confirmation just yet. And you know, overall the trend is still up, so you can wait for that fractal to form and try and pick the top, or you could wait for some sort of, you know, next breakthrough. So we've had, you know, this low got taken out, and then really if we're wanting to confirm that the downtrend is really in place, we've had one low taken back, but that's just a correction. If we drop down and take out that low again, the next low, two lower lows formed, you know, then we technically are in a downtrend on the 4-hourly basis, and you could be trading the false breakout on the daily. All right, switching gears to stock markets, and in a way save the best till last because it's some of the most interesting of what's going on. This is our weekly trend in the S&P, and so we can go back to here's 2020 with the big crash down. Looks tiny now, right? Which is funny. We've obviously had an epic rally since those lows of March 2020. And if you notice, just looking at the fractals again, we've not managed to, on any occasion, actually close below a previous low fractal. So, you know, what is an uptrend? It's higher. You know, when you're drawing a rising trend line, you connect it to the lows, right? What is the definition of uptrend? It's really just higher lows being formed. That's how you can judge it in terms of technical analysis. I can never seem to move these trend lines for some reason. Always ends up moving the chart. Oh, there we go. I think you just click a bit to the left. Anyway, you can see here, 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 even here, more recent, where I've actually drawn it in just to demonstrate the point. We did go below it, but we'd never actually closed. We came back to this high here, and a bit of a kind of significant support, and we rallied up again. We never closed to it, but let's see if I can do it. No, there we go. This time around, which I've obviously drawn through, we've had, as of last week, a weekly close through the previous fractal. Now, does that mean we've got a new downtrend happening? No, it's not guaranteed by any respects. This is a strong uptrend, and just because we had one down week through a fractal doesn't necessarily mean that this big uptrend is reversing, but it clearly is losing some steam, and breaking through that fractal is a sign of weakness in the uptrend, and it's something to be watching out for. And I think naturally people are going to be wanting to buy the dip. So we've had 3 weeks of pretty sharp sell-off here in the S&P, down from the record high. I know the Nasdaq's down over 10%. I forget the percentage in terms of the S&P, but you do the maths yourself. 4,800 was the high. Now we're down at 4,400. So 400 out of 4,400. It's not a million miles away from 10% as well, is it? So decent correction now. So some people will be tempted to buy this dip, and we're actually even coming down to this kind of previous technical support. So that being the case, you're either buying the dip, going into this Fed meeting, or you're looking at this low that we've just broken down and taking the point that I've just made, that we took out this fractal, and that was support, but now in theory it should be resistance, right? So if we jump over to our daily chart, you could see that it's already kind of worked once, where the market broke down through it. The very next day it tested that old low, and drop down from it, right? But maybe we get up there again. Maybe we get as high as this fractal up here. Maybe we even get to this, this spike low back there. If some sort of dip buying bounce happens, we want to think about the fact that actually we have taken out that weekly fractal for the first time in a while. Maybe that's significant, and maybe that's a reason to look for opportunities to sell this market down. We don't want to sell at the lows, obviously, but if there is we can buy the dip, but we can also think about once there's been a significant bounce back into this this area of former support, now resistance, or maybe even a bit higher, we can think about, maybe there will be more selling coming back in, waiting for higher prices. Okay, and last but not least, Bitcoin had a bit of a rough weekend, actually, a bit of a rough week last week. Closed rough, I think it was down over 9% for the week, and it's starting the new week off in a bit of a rough fashion as well. This is our weekly chart, and it's quite clean. For a while I've drawn all these resistance zones through it. I wanted to mix it up a bit this week. So you can see that on a weekly basis we broke down through this fractal, and we've broken down through another fractal as of last week. So we're breaking lows, and we're making, we made a new lower high here. So all this action, which is pretty obvious to see, is bearish, right? The trend is down in terms of this most recent set of candles on a weekly basis. Obviously, it was generally bullish prior to that. Even here, where we had this steep sell-off from the high, you can see on a fractal basis, we actually, we came down and basically, this was the closest thing we had to a fractal here. Didn't technically meet the definition of one, but actually we came down and just hit that fractal low. So we never actually technically made a lower low in terms of fractals. I mean, you can see even this one, it's just, it only had, because it made a lower low here, that technically wasn't a fractal. So maybe you could have said that was a pretty reasonable low. Sometimes you have to kind of bend the rules a bit. So we took out that one, we dropped down to this one, and then rallied up again, right? But on this occasion, we have been taking out lows pretty decisively up for a second time now. And so it's the logic that I have is that it would be difficult for bulls to really kind of take over the market without at least the bears having a go at this major level down here, which is about 29k. It looks like we're heading down to test 29k and to see if we can get another break low. And if we do, obviously that's pretty significant. I've been talking about it for a while. That's when you can get this double top pattern and potentially much steeper correction coming after that. That's when you need to start looking at really like a logarithmic chart versus this one, because you can see this, that would still be a steep percentage-wise if we drop from 29k down to the former record high from 2018, which, hold on. Okay. Yeah, there you go. You can see that's our 2018 peak, down to 17k. From 29k down to 18k, that's obviously a that's another 30% drop even after this big drop we've already had. From 60 odd k down to the old record high, 18k. I mean, we're talking major percentage declines here, but that is what Bitcoin tends to do. It tends to have these epic 80% crashes and somehow still survives. So maybe that's what we're looking at right here. So for the time being, I'm not seeing any reason to buy the dip. So here's our daily chart, just to round things off here. Again, we mentioned on a weekly basis that we've taken out lows, and the same thing on the daily chart, right? We are consistently making lower lows, lower highs, and continue to do so. And we're below 35k as we speak. And on the 4-hourly chart, obviously you can look for the first sign of a bounce, and on this occasion, for example, the we had this little down channel, but we actually managed to break out. We popped higher, but we faded pretty quickly and started rolling over. And then we were in this channel here. We tried to break out again, but just ran into that old high, rallied straight down to, dropped straight down to the bottom of the range and plummeted out again. So generally speaking, you can see the momentum is still very much to the downside here in Bitcoin. Arguably, we're kind of getting into value areas where it's cheap to buy. Okay, that's fine. But in terms of a chart reading basis, there's no sign of a bottom happening yet. So you're basically catching a falling knife if you're trying to actually buy Bitcoin at this point. In my opinion, you at least need some sign of a base, and it seems logical to me that we'd actually try to test these lows down here, which is still another 5,000 below where we currently are. All right, let's call it a day there. Bit of a change of pace this week, actually a longer webinar than normal, with all that explanation of the trend and stuff. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll try and keep up a bit of the fractals going into next week. We don't have to reiterate the long-term trends in every webinar, but sometimes it's good to look back and reassess things. All right, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. Good luck trading this week, and see you at the same time next week.